Jessica Holsapple with SCG Consulting Group, and this is the Systems Culture Growth Podcast. I am joined today with my guest, Justin Hilton, founder of Safe Place International, and has been running a real estate property management company for a couple of decades, which helps his philanthropic endeavors. And Justin and I are going to dive in, talk about leadership, taking on the responsibility of running a global organization, and find out what that means to him. So welcome, Justin. Thank you so much for joining.
I am so excited. And of course, I'm a huge Jessica Holsapple fan. So just really looking forward to some time with you. It's been a while.
Yeah, the feeling's mutual. And, I like to start off with an icebreaker. So I have an icebreaker for you if you're okay with that.
Love that.
What is one word to describe how you're feeling right now?
Weary, but excited. Oh, I did too. Sorry. Okay. Did I lose?
You can try again. How would you summarize that? Okay, fair enough. I don't like to, pry too much of what's making you feel like that. Just kind of acknowledging that that's in the room for this conversation, whatever means to you. And on my side, that might just be the caffeine jitters. Maybe it's lack of caffeine for you.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle of jet lag, caffeine, and Zooms since 2 a.m. this morning.
Yeah, so you run a global organization, just came back from Greece, which is where it's kind of headquartered. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Safe Place?
Yeah, so Safe Place kind of grew out of my work doing what I called serial philanthropy, where I would travel the world from Cambodia to Vietnam to Bangladesh to Nepal to India and look for organizations that I felt like were doing really meaningful work, but were underfunded and were kind of off the radar. And I would find out, kind of what the secret sauce in what they were doing was, what were they doing that was working, and would also, try to coach them on getting more resources or doing some basic organizational stuff. And I would sort of be a bee. I would cross-pollinate, kind of like you do, Jessica. I would find out, one best practice and share that with this organization in Cambodia. And I'd share that with activists who are working on political causes in India, that sort of work. That segued into, accidentally on purpose, starting my own organization, working with LGBT refugees. We first started in Istanbul, and then we grew to Athens. And of course, you came and spent 3 months with us and observed, what it's like to have 18 shelters and a community center in Athens, and then a couple shelters in Lesbos, as well as safe houses we support globally. And so it's been an incredible journey, and as you shared in the beginning, I spent most of my professional life doing real estate and was always trying to break the habit, literally for almost 25 years. And ironically, this work with this really amazing community of asylum seekers has finally led me out of real estate. And I think, finding something that demands all of me and that trumps all the fear that I could have around losing the security of real estate and something that's been really lucrative has been such a blessing. So I'm happy to report that one of our you're such an amazing coach, because one of our goals was that I would be debt free, which I am now, and that I would be out of real estate. And certainly I'd had many coaches before try to help me with that, but you led me to being debt free and completely out of real estate. So thank you for that. And it's a good feeling.
Yeah. You said something in the beginning about accidentally on purpose. Yeah. And I think a lot of founders share that, right? They either see a need in the market, and in your experience, it was just the human capacity need of, I need to help someone. And from there, you've created this global organization. And I also think accidentally on purpose, you spent a couple of decades doing real estate, because that allowed you to create these housing programs worldwide that literally shelter and save lives. And having been there and seen firsthand experience in Athens, just the incredible work that you're doing. I think between your heart calling and how your life led up perfectly, serendipitously to lead you to this mission, doesn't feel like an accident. And I'm so happy to hear that you are fully involved and can give your gifts to the world and so many people that need you. So that's a really incredible story. And I know that's not even skimming the surface. So if you'd like to learn more about Justin, please visit safeplaceinternational.org and read some of more about the journey there. Justin, you just described an incredible amount of responsibility advising and working with, kind of micro founders in all of these other places around the world, and overseeing this large global operation and organization. And you're also a father, a dedicated father and a husband to toddlers, a dedicated husband and father to toddlers. So, and there's probably a lot more that we're not even mentioning. How do you handle all of those responsibilities?
Well, I mean, just to be transparent, a lot of prayer, and a lot of gratitude. I mean, I count myself very blessed that my main problem is that I have too many things that I'm, incredibly passionate about, and nothing in my life that isn't over that high bar of totally committed and inspired, and so I often think of the how do you eat an elephant, a bite at a time thing, and for me, often I'm a little overwhelmed by the big picture, because we're really looking systematically at how do NGOs and academia and corporations work together to meaningfully impact equity in the way that we work with marginalized populations around the world. This is a really big question that has a lot to do with how we all live together and how we value life and how we distribute power and how we work with status and how we overcome our own conditioning and how we create the world that we long to live in with all of our bias and fear. And the way that I find I can do that without having a ton of anxiety is just by savoring every interaction. Like, we're having this conversation now, and I know that I'm going to leave this conversation a different human being than when we entered into it. And really looking at every interaction that I have, which most of them are virtual, as a bit of a soup. I'm putting myself in the soup. I'm ready to take on a lot of different flavors. I don't know where the soup is going to go, but I know that I'm going to be changed, and I'm willing to be a force of change. I'm willing to influence, but I'm also willing to be shifted and molded. And I think that is the only way that I can sort of take on monumental task. Because if I thought I had this blueprint in my mind and I was just going to willfully execute it, it'd be way too stressful, because I would be trying to go through walls of bricks. But if I'm surrendering and really just taking this incredible journey of my own unfolding and shifting and changing, and the mystery of how we inform and change each other and influence each other, then that's quite exciting, right? Because it's not all my responsibility. I'm just like a grain of sand on the beach,
Yeah.
All I have to do is be my grain, totally my grain. But I'm not, the weight of the world is not on me. I'm just really clear on that. Like, I'm just a piece of an ecosystem. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I mean, incredibly well described. And I know that's really hard for founders, because especially someone like you who has been leading people and organizations for so many years, you come with a lot of background information and a lot of knowledge that could help guide and shift and change and educate, newer people, people jumping into this conversation that might have all of the excitement and commitment that you do without all that background information. So what I'm hearing you say is that you have a level of openness, or not even a level, like you are literally only there to be present in the moment and have an open experience where you can say, I am willing to be shifted and changed, and I am willing to bring who I am to this conversation and all my background information should it be called upon. But I'm also willing to learn and accept and adapt.
Absolutely. And before we went on air, you were talking about this process of pivot and flow. And I think that really aptly describes how I experience leadership. In one moment, I am talking to people about personal responsibility, hiring, firing, making very concrete, tangible decisions. In the next moment, I am extremely receptive to the wisdom of the group or the wisdom of the many experts that I have the privilege to be on team with. And I think it's that very fluid, kind of non-fixed identity that allows us to lead in a way that really incorporates all the gifts that are available. Like I really see leadership more as a facilitative role. And part of that facilitation sometimes is, hey, this is the structure. Yeah. You need to show up and be accountable. This needs to be a safe place. This needs to be a predictable place. Yeah. This needs to be a place that has, that meets people's needs in a way they can rely on. And it needs to be a place where everyone's voice and gifts get utilized. And if we're an organization about equity, the way that we work with power and structure and influence and co-creation and collaboration is really important.
Yeah. You mentioned taking on two very distinct kind of sides of the brain or modes of operation when as a founder and as someone that's leading this organization, that sometimes you need to make those decisions that are concrete, kind of black and white. And then sometimes you need to be open and receptive and creative and strategically thinking. So I think that's something that I myself personally have underestimated of, once you've had a decade of experience doing one thing, you can say, wow, I'm really good at this and I've mastered this and I want to put my head down and just go full force in this. At least that's been my experience. Yeah. And through that, you can think you've mastered something, but the world is evolving, everything's changing. And if you're not open and receptive to pivoting and flow or flexing your style and being open to changing something about yourself, you're really shutting off a big part of what you need to embody as a leader. So, for me personally, if I'm an operations person who shies away from sales and marketing and kind of more of the creative style of things, then I can't operate a functioning business holistically, right? Or for maybe this kind of typical founder who is more strategic and vision oriented, who doesn't like to be bogged down in the details. You can't run an effective organization without having some of those details being taken care of. So it's either you as a founder taking it on or really entrusting in the people that you've surrounded yourself with on the team. So how do you, knowing that you're only one human being, do so much, and what's important to you in regards to finding a team to support you so that you can kind of live in your area of flow as much as possible?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. And I think that, one thing that I really am cognizant of all the time is if it's all about me, it's just going to be kind of a macrocosm of my life, which is fine. But my life is just filled with the idiosyncrasies and particular neurosis of this particular man with this particular history, right? So I look at the team as more an organic system that I'm a part of, rather than a team that's supporting my vision. You know, I feel like, I don't have the whole vision. If it was just my vision, I would get some version of how my life has been up to now. But if I'm willing to surrender and just be a piece of the vision, and sometimes that piece looks really active, you know, because might be playing the role of charismatic founder, someone who's just like enrolling people and catalyzing people and, you know, putting the vision into a narrative that's really compelling and brings folks on. So that might be a very, very visible role, but it's really important for me and just kind of like obvious to me that that I'm just like a cog in this this system, and that leadership is not about a particular view that's being executed and supported, strategically supported. It's more about, you know, facilitating a systematic honing of kind of design thinking where we're getting better and better and clearer on what we're doing. And we're getting more and more able to collaborate and surrender and trust each other to do that, you know, which I think is an art that, you know, that sort of brings all of our conditioning up, all of our survival conditioning up. But it's great it sucks to be the smartest guy in the room, right? It sucks, you know, because we want to be surprised by life. We want life to be mystery. We don't want to be with a partner that we can totally map. We want to be with a partner that's a mystery to us and that's showing us whole new worlds and like shattering our reality and changing our paradigms. We want to be on a team like that too, right? We want to be on teams of equals, are people that just know far more and have different ways of navigating space than we do.
Yeah. And I think, you know, again, you kind of stumbled into this accidentally on purpose. And it sounds to me that the organic way that this has shaped you has also required you to adopt that mindset that I am willing to be changed. I am willing to be informed. Because I think what happens, and, you know, I know this from being in leadership early on when no one prepared me and I had to learn a lot of hard lessons. It was the first thing I did was I have to have it all together. Everybody has to know exactly that I'm capable, I'm qualified. They're following my direction. I have the experience. And very quickly, the most humbling experience I learned was humility is everything. To admit that we don't have all the answers, and we, in fact, are looking for others to shape our answers or our decision-making process. And then as a leader, taking ownership of moving that forward, where at some point we have to make decisions. But I think that's a really big challenge. I know that I experienced early on, still experience, right? It's the dichotomy between having all the answers and moving things forward, or admitting that we don't have all the answers. However, some things have to move forward. So when you're accidentally on purpose starting something, openness really sounds like the best place to kind of get yourself to be ready and prepared for that journey.
Yeah, well, I think as we both know, no one grows because it's a good idea or because they want to, right? Like, there wasn't any scenario where I was going to have any big breakthroughs in the way that I operated in life, buying and selling real estate. That was not out of my comfort zone. That was something I knew how to do. And I wasn't going to do that in a dynamically different way. And I wasn't going to stumble on a different way. But as you know, and as you describe with, you know, taking on a lot of responsibility, when we engage in things that really matter to us, that are way out of our, you know, wheelhouse, then there is an opportunity, a very fertile environment for dynamic growth. You know, everything becomes malleable, and there's an opportunity to rapidly change the very, you know, baseline of how we approach life, how we approach relationship, how we approach ourselves. You know, even, you know, one thing that you and I have talked about often spirituality, I know that's, not a word that's used a lot in business, becomes a really core part, because there's something very spiritual about surrendering. It's not what you're supposed to do in business. You're supposed to have the idea and execute it, the agenda and a negotiation. And, it's all about winning and losing, and very binary matrix led process.
Right.
But I think, whether you're dealing with the terminal illness of a loved one, or, creating a system that is truly equitable and can scale, there's an opportunity to be changed by the experience. And I think that's really what's interesting about leadership, is being in those places where you're out of your comfort zone and out of your depth.
Yeah. You had mentioned something about kind of, we have our own innate operating systems. How you grew and built your real estate is how you approach life, right? You take one opportunity, you see the next opportunity, you grow from that opportunity, and all of a sudden you have this big thing in front of you. And so you were able to take that into Safe Place and understand that you're bringing yourself and your modes of operating into that. But when you say dynamic growth and kind of readiness for dynamic growth, that does feel like such a critical pillar to leadership, of knowing I'm going to be changed by every experience that I go into, and a readiness for that. And kind of and also owning that we are who we are. For the most part, we have our behavioral mechanisms that aren't going to be the same as everyone else's, but owning that you're going to be dynamically grow and change. And for me, throughout doing this for some years and a lot of personal development work, what I recognized is when something stops working, you can try to force it, which generally we do because our subconscious behaviors take over.
Right.
But when it stops working, and that's when you can surrender and say, hey, listen, I tried it. I tried this way for years, and some things it might be 3 years you tried to grow and scale your business in one direction, and you realize you keep coming across these issues. Or whether it's in interpersonal relationships, you've tried for a couple decades to approach things in a different way, and then you surrender and say, I'm meeting all the wrong people. What am I doing wrong? And once you surrender and that you are ready and anticipating growth and change, I think that's when you can be more relaxed in the environment and the fluidity of the process change. If you continue to resist things, then you're just going to get the same results you always got: frustration, burnout, kind of pushing things forward when they don't need to be pushed forward. So that's been my personal experience. And I know a lot of people struggle with, at what point do I keep doing the things that have made me successful to date? And at what point can I open up new possibilities and, hang on for the ride and see what kind of growth and change I can get me and my organization into? Would you agree?
Absolutely. And when you were describing that, what I was thinking about is just our relationship to what we don't know. Because obviously there's what we know we don't know, and then what we don't know that we don't know. And so, often, when we were co-managing Safe Place, we would encounter people that it wasn't in their universe that there was anything that they didn't know, that what they knew was all there was to know. Certainly that's one relationship with what you don't know, which is no relationship. Yep. And then there's fear of what we don't know as well. And then there's sort of a vigilance around trying to manage what we don't know. And then I think there can just be a surrendering and a softness around knowing that we know some of what we don't know, but it's just vast and overwhelming what we don't know. And we're going on this journey, but that not knowing most of what there is to know is not a handicap. Consultants, McKinsey consultants, BCG consultants, they go in and they make recommendations to people who have been experts in the field for 40 years.
Right.
Because they have a perspective and a way to look at things outside of, a given framework that's cathartic. And so I think that approach is often super helpful when you're leading. It's just realizing continually that there's so much that you don't know. And I think this is the beauty, and you and I have talked about this a lot, of working with people who have failed.
Yeah.
You know, back when I did real estate, I often had bankers say, I'll never lend to someone who hasn't had a deal go painfully south. That person has no sense of downside and no sense of what could go wrong. And I think it's also true, you know, with people in business. If you haven't had extremely humbling failures, then your blind spots are probably going to be vast.
So true. And what came up for me was, you know, you operate a not only or like international organization, but a multi-generational organization and different cultures around the world. So many different experiences. And what I also thought about was I had many failures, but a pivotal failure for me was being in a leadership position when I was a great manager. I could run the business. I made a lot of significant differences in the organization I was working for, but I was failing as a leader. My team could not get behind me. They didn't understand why I was pushing things forward and all of that. And through that experience, it changed me fundamentally, because it was one of those things I realized, all right, this isn't working. I've got to surrender to owning that I'm an okay manager, business manager, but not a great leader of people. Right. And that fundamentally changed me, as you know, because I started putting people first. And I think, to your point about we don't know what we don't know, I think, you know, my experience of being a teenager and in my 20s, it was, I knew everything. And I felt like I had to know everything when I was put in a position of leadership. And then through a lot of failures, you start learning and recognizing, okay, I don't know some things. And as I started talking to more of the executive level people or people running their own organizations, now I go in with a ton of questions, because I'm like, if someone is really headstrong about moving forward with something, there's something there that I don't know. We've got to uncover that before we move forward. And I think you get to a certain point, and it sounds like you've surrendered to this point where it's like, there is more that I don't know than there is that I do know. And I better get really curious about that. So I think that's something that, you know, someone with your level of experience could really share and offer the world, is accept that you don't know what you don't know, and that's also really okay. And all you have to do is show up, be fully present, and learn. And then at the point where a decision needs to be made to move forward, you can tap into that other kind of place inside you that allows you to step into that leadership. So, yeah, I think knowing what you don't know and admitting that is powerful.
Absolutely. And I think that what we've also seen is that wherever you're vibrating, the culture that assembles around you. It's
so true.
The teams that you're attracted to, the teams that you hire, no matter how you try to do something else. And so the good news is that if we engage in that self-responsibility and that ability to surrender and be active, but be humble, then we tend to attract those kinds of people that are also doing that are not sort of flexing and in a sort of fight for a will.
Yes.
But if we're sort of battling with that inside, that battle gets externalized, and we sort of like trying to sort out how we deal with these various people on the team. And really, the truth is often that we have to just kind of get clean with ourselves. Like,
so true.
You know, we have to really reach that place in ourselves, because, you know, I think, you know, we've seen that romantically or on a work team level, people show up and reflect our consciousness. You know, and that's good news and bad news, right? You know? but I think it is helpful to go that there is no one out there, that there's not an other that we have to kind of work it out with, that people are always reflecting our consciousness on the micro and the macro.
Yeah.
And that, we don't need to spend a lot of time managing them. We mostly need to manage ourselves, and then it'll be just really clear how to be with them. I know that's like sort of not always an easy thing to do on a practical level, because we're all pieces of work, right? We're all in progress, and we still got to like have the lights on and make the widgets, as we heal emotionally. But I think it is important to realize that that our own vibration is the most important contribution we can make.
So
and
true.
that, that because we're kind of told in this consumer culture that if we pick the right people and buy the right toothpaste and drive the right car and live in the right place, everything's going to be fine.
Right.
So when we're on a work team or a workplace, we're like, oh, well, this is working out. I don't feel the way I want to feel inside, so I'm just going to pick something else.
Right.
Pick another team and pick another workplace, pick another romantic partner, so I can feel a different way. And after, 10 or 20 years, we start to notice that there's some themes,
right?
that seem to survive all the scenery. And then that's the point where the humility allows us to say, okay, maybe I should just look in the mirror and say hello.
Yeah. No, beautiful. And I think this is one thing that, COVID taught us, and we can at least reflect on American culture of saying, the house, the car, all these things. And then as soon as all the distractions are taken away, how's that working for you? Right. And I think a lot of people came to that reflection. So people talk about there's no one available to hire, and the labor market, there's a shortage. And I always talk about, let's attract the talent to you, right? And that comes from the level of consciousness of who are you? What are your values? What do you share? And what I will say is an incredibly unique experience about our journey together was not only were there people that were willing to come work for free and volunteer, they were incredible people with incredible amounts of experience, background, education, and we were creating a culture that was attracting these people, that would come and say, how can I help? And that is something that I know a lot of employers are struggling with right now. And you bring to light something incredibly important. It's not, there's no one out there. People are, lazy. They want more money, XYZ. It's who are you to attract the people that you want inside your organization? And you might need to take that time with you and your organization, the stakeholders, to figure out how are we going to set the tone. And another really unique experience that we shared was when we brought these people onto the team, we got a lot of messages and feedback that they had never been in an environment where vulnerability was not only accepted, it was expected, right? When we break down the walls of we don't know it all, this is a place for learning and sharing, and this is a safe place to come with your ideas and be ready to strap in for the evolving of this. It relaxes people to bring their best ideas, to share, to come with feedback that they might otherwise hold back. So I think that's something that, if people are struggling with hiring or looking for talent, be thinking about how you're attracting them by who you are as a founder or as an organization. So I know you've always been able to attract incredible people into your sphere. And I remember being very grateful when we met of saying, I had just come to the realization that I was attracting the things into my life. I had just acknowledged and accepted that. And so when you came into my life, I was like, wow, I'm on the right path. I have found someone that is as equally ambitious and, that is not only open to receiving, but is open to giving and guiding as well. So I think that's really important. And you're right. Most people, if not a lot of people, don't think about that, who they are to attract the people that are coming into their lives versus searching and seeking and accepting that there is nothing, right? It's who are we to, where do we need to look and reflect? If we're, we're having a low vibe kind of environment, what things need to be looked at a little closer to attract the type of people that you want to work with and that you want in your life. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. And this is something that I learned from you. I mean, in your many past lives, but one of them being a recruiter. I mean, I think what you taught me really clearly is, you can't compete on money, like, Pascal, my husband's business, they all make, 10, 20 times what anyone at a Safe Place makes.
Right.
And they encounter the same issues. And if you ask them what's the most important thing about, working for CyberCube, it's the emotional presence and care of their leadership.
Right.
And that's the same, at Safe Place. Like, people want to be part of something that's meaningful, and they want to be respected, and they want to be trusted, and they want to be valued, and they want to be seen. And, the money, is necessary for folks to pay rent, but it's really way overrated. And the sort of, commodification of work, I think is greatly distorts what actually attracts people.
Right.
And I think we all buy into that, right? We all do things because we think we should, because it has a certain monetary value, and then it's empty. And so we want to get more money to compensate for that. It's just a total betrayal of our inner drive.
Right.
And then eventually we leave those things, and hopefully we make the choice to follow our internal alignment.
Yeah.
And once you do that, as you are living proof, there's no going back. Once you have created the inertia of following your, what's right inside, then, everything else works itself out. And, as if that's primary, then life becomes much more simple, right?
So true. And we only have a couple minutes left, but you talked about falling into this accidentally on purpose, but as soon as you made a conscious decision to move toward your passion and what you felt your purpose was in life, and say, all right, real estate gave me this opportunity to be philanthropic and lead with my heart and be very generous. And now my life is calling me to this other direction. Like you said, you put your purpose in motion, and it created the inertia to now you were able to leave that chapter of your life and go full head, heart, and spirit into what is lighting you up. And you shared with me that you've been up since 2:30 in the morning on multiple Zoom calls. And we're here today in the middle of the afternoon, and you are lit up and passionate and still ready to take on the rest of the day. So that's just a true testament to putting your heart and spirit into your true purpose. And I know that's an evolution over time. So I commend you for that. And it's very inspiring. And again, I think that's where the world is taking us, at least, in the more privileged countries where we get an opportunity to think about these things at a deeper level, where our Maslow's hierarchy of needs is taken care of, to where we can actually think about the meaning and purpose behind life. But for those of us that can, it's becoming overwhelmingly important, and that's creating a whole shift in the economic system. So thank you so much for sharing that, and for being living proof that it is entirely possible to lead a life where, business skills and heart-centeredness can meet and allow you to kind of live a purpose-driven life. So thank you so much for being an example of that.
Absolutely. And just to conclude, I think these transitions into alignment don't happen on their own. And they often require a guide, coach, midwife. And that is really the role that you play so elegantly and powerfully. So, I think I would just sort of conclude our conversation today with really considering the kind of help that we pick, and knowing that if we're going to make a powerful transition that we haven't been able to make for decades, but we've known was right for us, we probably can't do it alone. So to pick a team that is used to birth, that is used to change, because when you said, so you want to be debt free, what's that look like? So you want to be out of real estate, what's that look like? It takes someone holding our hand and guiding us to get through territory that our past strategies have kept us from navigating before. So I thank you for being an expert, and I encourage anyone listening to find a guide such as yourself. And I don't think that there's many as skilled as you out there, and really take the help.
Yeah. And this is the intention and purpose of this podcast, is just letting everyone know that you are not alone, and that these types of transitions require people that understand your experience to whatever degree we can understand one another and relate as human beings. So just, I know this information coming from you is going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much for guiding those people who needed to hear that message today. And this has been the Systems Culture Growth Podcast. If you like this episode, please subscribe. And where can they find you, Justin?
safeplaceinternational.org, and my email is in there, and we love to collaborate on every level. So reach out and we'll talk.
Yeah, please visit the site and learn more about Justin and his organization. It's incredible, the work that they're doing, and there's so many different opportunities for you to give back in one capacity or another to Safe Place, or just learn from Justin's experience. So thank you again, and I cannot wait till we can be together.
Me too. I can't wait.